Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of WTF. I'd like to introduce Angela Heiser again and Alan Stevens. And we're talking today about sharing public spaces and the kind of, the implications for behavior in those public spaces. So, Angela, I think you have a story to tell, don't you?
Hmm. And all of these things happened recently, so I find it really interesting. I went on a train ride, and just a regular city train, and they're quiet carriages. And I always choose those because I bring my Kindle and I read. And so I'm sitting in there, and right underneath the quiet carriage sign where it says three people talking to each other, at each other, on the top of their lungs. I mean, you could hear them from any space in that carriage, and nobody said anything. And I'm just embracing the grumpy old woman these days, like more testosterone, less estrogen. I'm just, saying it, call it as it is. And I walked in and I said, would you please, this is the quiet space. And the thing that happens is people look at me like I'm the one with the problem.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that really gets me. There's no integrity around that. I'm not somebody who says you need to follow the rules at all time. I am, however, very aware of the fact that we live in a really noisy world, that not everybody copes with noise really well. There are, like I'm helping with a conference at the moment. We're organizing a quiet space where people can go to get away from the overwhelm. So there are all these things that we need to consider these days. But when we're just coming from that space of just my needs matter.
Yeah.
Well, when we look at it, in profiling, I always look at people and go, okay, everybody is suffering or is insecure. Everybody wears a mask. Everybody pretends they're not wearing a mask. And everybody is a combination of how they've decided to respond to their environment. So everybody's got issues that they're carrying, no matter who we are. We've all got stuff. But when we're in that situation, somebody says to us, hey, you should be, be quiet. It's a quiet carriage, for instance. People take offense to it because they know they've done the wrong thing, and they go into that defense mode straight away internally, but they come out as an attack on the outside, and they'll actually have a shot at you. And that's why people then won't get up and say something. I was in one train one day, and this guy's talking on his phone. He's talking to his son, and he's laying the law down on getting his homework done and everything else. And what are you doing on your homework? And it's this is in the quiet carriage, and he's it's geography, and he's telling his son all about this, and full on. Everybody in the carriage was sitting. Nobody was saying anything. You could see everybody was agitated. And then he went, "Oh shit, I'm on the wrong train." And so everybody just cracked up and started laughing at him. And somebody turned around and said, "And you're telling your son off about how to do his geography and everything else, and you can't even work out how to get home." The poor guy went red, disappeared out of the train. But it took a funny situation for everybody then to react to it and actually say something and join on it.
Absolutely. Isn't that brilliant? Yeah. But even if people hadn't said anything, there's a shared experience, there's a shared kind of eye rolling, if you like, But the irony of giving his son a hard time about geography and not being able to find his way home.
So it's a case of be careful when you take on those attitudes when you're doing that with people. But being mindful of other people, it's also being mindful of ourselves. And that's what people don't realize. Oh, why should I do that for other people? Well, you're doing it for yourself. It's like forgiveness, forgiving somebody, and that being angry with somebody is like taking poison and hoping they will die. It doesn't work. So it's getting into the right mindset. Everything we've been talking about comes back to mindset again. To respect other people, we have to respect ourselves first as well.
And that gets back to awareness. I mean, like quiet carriages, there's nothing worse than listening to half a conversation. And you can work out what it's about. You don't really want to work out what it's about because you don't want to hear the bloody thing. It's I mean, the quiet carriage in a train or whatever, that's the ideal place to not. As you say, to have some respite from the overwhelm.
So I go to Sydney, and quite often I leave early in the morning, go to meetings down there all day, and then come back in the afternoon. So I'm not getting much sleep. And so I like using the quiet carriage to get that sleep. Now, if I know that I'm going to have some of my business partners, etc., I know are going to be trying to ring me in the morning on the way down, I'll go to another carriage where I can take that call. So I've already worked out, I thought, first of all, how do I impact on other people? Because I know if I upset other people, that's going to come back on me as well. I'm not going to feel real good about it.
Yeah.
So therefore, set it up so I don't get into that situation in the first place. But then, you know, if I'm in a quiet carriage and I notice other people who are making those noises and carrying on and everything else, sometimes you need to go over and say something to them, but it's doing it in a way in which that gets them to not retaliate against it, to try and understand it. And that these days is getting harder and harder to do because everyone's getting more and more broken.
Yeah. And aggressive and impatient with you know, and they don't like being told that they're doing the wrong thing or whatever, or even implied that they're doing the wrong thing. Yeah.
The thing that I find sometimes is it's also a very, very fine line is with children. So sometimes you get into a space and children run amok, and then you can say something to the parent, and the parent will get really upset. It's none of your business. You don't educate my child. You stay out of it. But when you go, it's again, it's that compassion and that empathy and saying, you know, sometimes it takes a village to raise a child. When you've got a parent there who sits and it looks clearly exhausted, what's stopping me from having a conversation with the child, saying, come over here, have a chat with me, whatever it might be. No, but it's also if there are sometimes I get into a place and it's very obvious that the parent expects other people to handle the child. You know, so there's this, I'm just reading here my book and the child can do whatever it wants. And when people don't manage that, then that's not my problem. So I'm not sure if I'm making sense here. But what I'm saying is look around, notice what's going on, be responsible for yourself, for your children, for, you know, I'm not for other people who are an adult, but for children who don't have the capacity to think about the consequences yet. But it doesn't start in public places. It starts at home. You know, and this is the thing. This is what I would say to people. It's just notice how you behave in everyday life. What you're doing at home, you take into public spaces, your child will replicate.
Well, that's absolutely right. And children, you know, by nature are egocentric because they have to be, because you know,
of course
it's up to the parents to guide them and to educate them about those public spaces and what kind of behaviours are acceptable or not acceptable in public spaces. So, you know, none of us is telling anybody how to parent their child, but generally speaking, a parent, you know, it's their job. It's a parent's job to raise their child and to educate them about.
Exactly. It's sitting on a plane and the child behind me just kicks my seat all the time. So I'm sitting like this and I turned around and I said to the mother, would you please ask your child? I asked the child and the child was clearly not in, you know, I didn't have the function to actually comprehend what it was doing. I said to the mother, would you please ask your child or make sure that your child stops kicking? It's just a child. Simmer down. No, that's not how it works. But it's what I'm saying is, please, people, just it's a real plea. Look at how you are behaving, how your children behaving, and just start looking at the impact it has on other people.
Yeah, because remember, when it comes to raising children, we're not carpenters, we're not sculptors. Our job is not to turn our kids into something. Regardless, our job is to nurture them into the best version of themselves.
Exactly.
So this is where we then talk to our children. We explain things to them, because a child's mind does not fully develop until early 20s. It doesn't mature until that point.
25.
So, so to expect them to be able to self-regulate and everything else is ludicrous. And that is leaving, that, as far as I'm concerned, that's child abuse, because we're leaving the child to try and do something it can't do, it hasn't got the capacity to do, with that expectation, and therefore everybody else in the public gets angry because that's the way the child's behaving. So we take responsibility for ourselves, we take responsibility for our children, and we then are considerate towards other people.
Yes, indeed. Consideration towards other people.
And I think it's really important that we say we don't want to, we're not giving you parenting advice.
No.
We're not, the only thing we're saying is, and we're not saying you need to teach children to people please. You know, like it's not about turning children into pretzels. So they go, you know, give Auntie Helen a kiss, and the child goes, no, you know, and no, you are being unkind. Give Auntie, no, I don't want to. No, don't, that's not what I'm talking about. But it's about sharing public spaces in such a way that the child learns what works for creating connection and what disengages connection.
Indeed, and these conversations are not they're thought starters. They're not giving advice. They're not telling you how to do things or not do things, but they're thought starters, and we invite you into the conversation because Alan and Angela and I have, we all work in the realm of human communication, and we have complementary skills and expertise in that realm, and that's why we have these conversations, and we absolutely invite you all to join us in these conversations and
Have an
give
opinion.
Yes, absolutely. And we're not telling you how to do anything, but just thought starters, as Angela previously described. They're thought starters. They're things to just think about and become aware of and be more aware of. So with that, thanks very much for watching, and we'll get Angela to take us out. Thank you, Angela.
So let's continue building bridges of respect, one conversation at a time. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.